Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the free legal advice show on British Muslim TV. I'm your host Ilyas Bulbulia and I'll be with you for the next hour. As our regular viewers are aware, the free legal advice show provides you, our viewers, the opportunity to call in and ask us any questions that you have on any aspect of English law. On this show, I'm able to cover a vast, diverse range of matters. Matters ranging from immigration law matters, family law matters, criminal law matters. So whatever your legal questions are, please feel free to get in touch with us here live on the show. Two ways to get in touch: to speak to me live in the studio here, please ring on the landline number which appears at the bottom of the screen. Alternatively, if you want to send us a WhatsApp message or text message, you can do that by sending that message to the mobile number which also appears at the bottom of the screen. So for live calls, please call on the landline number which appears there at the bottom of the screen. And for messages to us, WhatsApp messages, text messages, please send those through to us on that mobile number which is also there at the bottom of the screen. A couple of minor points before we get going. On a live show, it's not always possible to take very detailed information from callers who call in. If your matter is complex and I need to take detailed information from you, or I need to look at documents before I can advise you, then I'll ask you to leave your number with the control room and I can have that more thorough discussion with you off air. And again, it's part of the free legal advice show and the advice that I provide off air is also free of charge. On the show, we get numerous questions on immigration law, which is fantastic. But as I said before, I am able to cover other areas of law as well, topical areas, relevant areas that our viewers might have queries about or in relation to: family law matters, criminal law matters, personal injury law matters. Whatever your questions are, please do feel free to get in touch on those two numbers: landline number for the direct call through to us in the studio here, or the mobile number for messages. Now, even before we've come on the show today, we've had a couple of questions that have come in on WhatsApp already. Now, some of these questions are just looking at the questions just before we came on air, and I noticed that some of the questions are actually quite detailed. So what I will do is I'll read the question out and then I'll advise you in relation to what your best options are. First question that we've received is a question on immigration law, which is fantastic. Quite long, the question. Let me read the question out. And it looks like it's a question about citizenship and the English language requirement. And the question is as follows. Our viewer says, Assalamu alaikum, hi. Could you please advise me on this? I have applied for citizenship a few months ago. I got an email yesterday saying they want me to provide them with an English language certificate, but I already provided the Life in the UK test certificate. I was told that if I passed my Life in the UK test before 2013, I don't need to provide the English language certificate. So I didn't do it. Now, do I need to book the test, and can you let me know about it? Which one do I need to do? Is it the B1 test? Okay, so the question is about citizenship and in particular in relation to the English language requirement. And what our viewer is saying is that when our viewer applied for citizenship, he or she's provided the Life in the UK test certificate, but not provided the English speaking and listening certificate. So Life in the UK has been done, but the speaking and listening certificate hasn't been provided. And it wasn't provided because our viewer thought, well, if you've done the Life in the UK test a long time ago, back in 2013, you don't need to do it. Unfortunately, that isn't the case. Your understanding, unfortunately, is slightly incorrect. Now, if you are required to meet the English language, English knowledge requirement, then it will be the case that you will need to do both. Not only will you need to submit the Life in the UK test certificate, you'll also need to submit the B1 test certificate. So if you do one, it doesn't mean that you're exempt from the other. If you do one, it doesn't mean that if you did that a long time ago, you don't need to do it. So you do need to do both. And I'll take you through what you need to do after I've taken our first call. Hello, assalamu alaikum. Hello, assalamu alaikum. Hello.
Oh, hello, assalamu alaikum, brother.
Ji, walaikum salam. Ji, bhai, thank you for calling.
Yes, brother. I did call you a couple of weeks ago regarding the appeal has been, the Home Office want to appeal.
Oh, right. I think you were saying to me...
They did send me a fingerprints.
Right, okay.
Yeah, hello, can you hear me, brother?
Yeah, I can hear you. You said they've sent you a letter for fingerprints.
Yeah, letter for the fingerprints, and I have booked that.
Okay.
Okay, so my question is, brother, you know when you got the visa and you got the travel documents?
Yep.
Do you allowed to go back to your country, back Afghanistan? Am I allowed to go back to Afghanistan? Travel documents, UK travel documents.
You can't travel to Afghanistan because if your claim for asylum is based on your fear of what's going to happen in Afghanistan. So if you've said, I can't go to Afghanistan.
So my visa, brother, yeah, I got that. My visa is like asylum also is on human right.
But you need to look at what have you. So you need to look at what kind of visa they grant you. Do they grant you refugee status, or do they?
Okay, right on refugee status on my BRP card. So that means
you can't go.
I can't go.
100% right. If it says refugee status on your BRP, then you can't go, because what will happen is the problem will occur at the indefinite stage. 5 years down the line, when you apply for indefinite leave to remain, that's when your indefinite leave to remain can be refused if you've traveled back to Afghanistan. That's the problem.
It's also if you don't have any, like if you have a reason to go to Afghanistan, like if you want to look for your mother, still you can go.
What happens is if you do go, they will, in 5 years' time, let's say when you apply for indefinite leave to remain, they will put your application on hold and they will investigate it. To be quite honest, you shouldn't, when you apply for the travel document, they ask you which country do you want to travel to. And anybody who says their own home country, even the travel document application is refused. You shouldn't travel. It's too risky to go to. Now, what a lot of people do is they go to a neighboring country. So they fly to Iran or they might fly to Pakistan. But officially...
Yeah, but nowadays, you can't go to Pakistan. They also don't give visa on travel documents to Pakistan.
Yeah. So maybe another neighboring country that you go into. But you can't, if you go into Afghanistan and there's a stamp on your passport saying you've entered Afghanistan, you're going to have problems at the indefinite. I wouldn't recommend it.
Okay. Thank you, brother.
No problem. Jazakallah. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you for your call. And in fact, just on that point, where refugee status has been granted, I should say you shouldn't travel back to your home country on the basis that, that's why you've been granted refugee status, a fear of returning to your home country. I wouldn't travel back until you actually obtain a British passport. So even after you obtain indefinite leave to remain, I wouldn't recommend going back to your home country up until you're granted British nationality. Once you've got British nationality, then it's not an issue traveling back to your home country. It can't have an impact on any kind of application that you made before. Hope that answers that question. Just before we go back to our questions, we have another caller waiting to come on. Let's take our next call. Hello, assalamu alaikum. Hello. Hello.
आवाज आ रही है
जी आवाज आ रही है जी भाई
मेरा 2-3 क्वेश्चन है मेरा एक क्वेश्चन ये है कि मेरा एक ब्रदर है
जी
एक वो स्टूडेंट वीजे पर आया था उसने इधर शादी की थी तो उसका एक बच्चा भी है
ओके
बच्चा है तकरीबन 3 साल का
राइट ओके
तो क्या वो अप्लाई कर सकता है?
जी, अगर उसके पास बच्चा है, 3 साल का बच्चा है, बच्चा ब्रिटिश है, तो
जी जी।
वो बच्चे के बेसिस पे वो अप्लाई करके यूके में रह सकेगा। जनरली वो लीगल पोजीशन है कि बच्चा ब्रिटिश है।
तो दूसरा रियाज भाई, मेरा सवाल ये है कि बिजनेस आदमी पाकिस्तान से इधर मंगवाना बिजनेस वीजे पर, उसका क्या प्रोसीजर है?
अभी बुला सकते हैं।
इसको थोड़ा सा एक्सप्लेन कर दें।
जी, नो प्रॉब्लम है। वो थोड़ा सा कॉम्प्लिकेटेड है वो इश्यू, तो मैं वो भी मैं एक्सप्लेन कर देता हूँ। जज़ाकल्लाह आपके।
ओके, थैंक यू वेरी
जी, thank you very much for your call. So the first question related to somebody here on a student visa. I think they've overstayed. They have, because of their relationship with somebody who is British, they have a child that is now British from that relationship. And the question was, based on the child, based on the British child, can the person who initially came here as a student, can they apply to stay in the United Kingdom? In general terms, it is possible to apply to stay here on the basis of a British child. If you're living with the child, or if you're not living with the child, you have contact with the child. So it is possible to do that. Obviously, there are requirements that need to be fulfilled. There's a documentary evidence requirement that needs to be fulfilled as well. But in general terms, whether you still are here on a student visa or you've overstayed, doesn't really matter. If you have a child that is British and you either live with the child or you have contact with the child, potentially you could apply to stay here on that basis. So it is possible. Obviously, as I've said, there are other requirements which need to be fulfilled as well. The second aspect of the question was in relation to business work permit visa. That's quite complex. We're going to be taking a short break. After we come back, I'll address that issue in relation to skilled worker visas after we come back. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to the Free Legal Advice Show on British Muslim TV. I'm your host, Ilyas Bulbulia. Just before the break, we had a caller who called in, asked a number of questions. One of the questions that they've asked is in relation to the new sponsorship system that we now have with us, whereby a business in the UK can sponsor a person to come to the United Kingdom in order to work. Viewer was absolutely right. The revised work permit scheme, now known as the skilled worker scheme, came into force around the beginning of this year. Now, it's the case that the scheme is much easier than before. Easier in the sense that there's no need on the business in the UK to look for workers within the United Kingdom. The job that they want to sponsor a person to come to the United Kingdom for is also at a much lower level. So it's not professionals who can only apply to come to the United Kingdom. So it's easier. There's no need to look for people within the UK or Europe. There's also no need to only employ migrants who are very highly skilled. You can now employ workers at a skilled level, which is much lower. So it is a much easier scheme. However, fundamentally, the scheme is still the same in the sense that it is the business that sponsors a person to come to the United Kingdom. They can't come to the United Kingdom simply to look for work in the United Kingdom. So that's the case. The scheme does exist. It's a much easier scheme. You still need a business in the UK that's willing to sponsor somebody. Right. We've had a number of other questions coming in. Let's have a look at those questions. Again, these are questions on immigration law. Now, one of the questions that we've had is to do with what I was addressing before, British citizenship applications and the need for the English test to be done. Normally, the requirement is that the Life in the UK test must be done, and also the B1 test in English has to be done. And what our viewer is asking is that they've submitted an application for British citizenship. They submitted the Life in the UK test. They haven't submitted the B1 test in English, the speaking and listening test. Now, what they're asking is whether they have to do this B1 test. Now, the position is this, that if you look at the application form, which is online, it does ask you when you applied for indefinite leave to remain. If an application was made, from my recollection, it's October 2013. If the application was made, and I'll check this during the break, there is a specific date. And if the application was made prior to this date, then you don't now need to show the Life in the UK test again. You don't need to do the B1 test again. But there is a specific date before which, if you've applied for indefinite leave to remain, you don't need to fulfill the Life in the UK test and the English language test requirement. So there is a specific date, and I will check the date and I will let you know what that date is. Now, the reason that there's a specific date is when that date came in, anybody who applied after that date had to do the Life in the UK test, had to do the B1 test in English. So there's no point somebody who's applied after that cutoff date, who's already fulfilled the Life in the UK test and the English language test requirement, to require them to do it again 3, 4, 5 years later when they apply for citizenship. So it's a question of when that date was and whether you applied before or after that date. But I'll need to check what that date is, and I will do that when we go for our break. We have a caller who's online. Let's take our next call. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Assalamu alaikum. जी.
वालेकुम सलाम.
जी brother. Thank you.
मेरा क्वेश्चन ये है, अभी आप स्किल वर्कर की बात कर रहे थे.
जी जी.
तो इसके लिए अगर एस्टेब्लिश बिजनेस नहीं है, बिजनेस तो कर रहा हूँ मैं 3-4 साल से, लेकिन वो कोई प्रॉफिट नहीं है उसमें, सिर्फ पैसे थोड़े बहुत लगा.
जी.
इसको स्पॉन्सर कर सकता हूँ कि नहीं? ये आईटी से रिलेटेड है.
ये तो इसमें क्या है कि प्रॉफिटेबिलिटी वो नहीं देखते. सो अब जब अप्लाई भी करते हैं ना लाइसेंस के लिए, तो दे डोंट लुक एट प्रॉफिटेबिलिटी एट ऑल. वो ये देखते हैं कि आपका बिजनेस जेन्युइन है, ट्रेडिंग बिजनेस है, कितने बंदे इसमें काम कर रहे हैं. दैट्स व्हाट दे लुक एट. तो आपके बिजनेस में कितने बंदे काम कर रहे हैं आपके बिजनेस में?
बंदे मैं फिर ऑनलाइन ही मेरे काम कर रहे हैं, लेकिन वो भी पाकिस्तान में बैठे कर रहे हैं.
असल में तो फिर क्या होता है, तो उसको एक्सप्लेन करना पड़ता है कि लुक, ये हमारा बिजनेस है, ये टर्नओवर है. क्योंकि जब अप्लाई करते हैं ना, तो वो इन्वेस्टिगेशन करने के लिए आ सकते हैं. तो उसको बताना पड़ता है कि लुक, दिस इज द नेचर ऑफ आवर बिजनेस. ये मेरा रीजन है टू स्पॉन्सर दिस पर्टिकुलर पर्सन. उसको जो बिजनेस केस है ना आपका, कि व्हाई यू नीड लाइसेंस, तो वो एक्सप्लेन करना पड़ता है. अगर उसको लगे कि ये सारी चीज जेन्युइन है, तो वो आपको लाइसेंस दे सकते हैं. इट डजंट मैटर अबाउट प्रॉफिटेबिलिटी, वो दे सकते हैं.
ठीक है,
इट्स पॉसिबल, मगर उसको प्रॉपर एक्सप्लेन करना पड़ता है कि लुक, दिस इज हाउ वी ऑपरेट. पॉसिबल है. ठीक है.
थैंक यू
जी. थैंक यू वेरी मच आपका कॉल के लिए. थैंक यू वेरी मच. I think we have another caller who's waiting. Let's go to our next call. Hello, assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
जी, thank you for calling. जी. Hello.
Hello, assalamu alaikum.
जी, वालेकुम सलाम. जी.
वालेकुम सलाम ना.
जी जी जी. भाई आप लाइव है, ऑन है?
ये लाइव है. मैंने एप्लीकेशन की हुई है, तकरीबन 3 मंथ हो गए हैं.
जी जी.
तो मैं पूछना था आजकल कितना टाइम लगता है?
जी. तो सॉरी, आपने किसके लिए अप्लाई किया है आपने?
हमने एप्लीकेशन भेजी हुई है. तो
हाँ, किस टाइप ऑफ एप्लीकेशन की है आपने? किसकी एप्लीकेशन की है? वीजा की अप्लाई किया है? यूके से, बाहर से?
वीजे के लिए अप्लाई.
किसके लिए? वीजा के लिए.
वीजे के लिए.
जी. भाई साहब, आप ऐसे एक काम करो ना कि आप टीवी के पास है ना,
तो
वहां से
वो की है जो बेटी जो चिल्ड्रन 7 ईयर के होते हैं उस बेस पे।
जी ठीक है, ओके। और यूके से किया है ना?
जी जी
ठीक है। भाई साहब, आपका वो टेलीविजन है ना, उसका आवाज़ काफ़ी आ रहा है, उसको थोड़ा सा डाउन कर लो और आप फ़ोन पे ही बात सुनो। जी, तो आप अभी वेट कर रहे हैं एप्लीकेशन के लिए, वेट कर रहे हैं आप अभी वीज़ा की वीज़ा का एप्लीकेशन जो डाला है, आप वेट कर रहे हैं जवाब के लिए?
जी जी वेट कर रहे हैं।
जी ठीक है, ओके। तो इसमें तो काफ़ी टाइम भी लग सकता है ना? इसमें तो
तकरीबन 3 मंथ हो गए हैं।
जी ठीक है। तो आपके वो बच्चे के बेसिस पे डाला है केस?
जी जी
वो फॉर्म याद है आपको? वो FLA-FP का फॉर्म था, कोई याद है आपको? नहीं, याद नहीं है?
किसका?
वो फॉर्म जो फिल किया था ना, जो फॉर्म डाला है आपने,
जी जी
वो फॉर्म का नाम याद है आपको कि क्या आपने सबमिट किया है?
वो नहीं है मुझे याद है।
जी ठीक है। वो बच्चे वाले जो केसेस होते हैं ना, बच्चे के बेसिस पे जो आप केस जमा करते हैं, तो नॉर्मली इट डज टेक अबाउट 6 मंथ्स 7 मंथ्स जवाब के लिए। सो 3 मंथ्स में बच्चे वाले जो केसेस है ना, उसका जवाब जनरली नहीं आता। वो 6 मंथ्स 7 मंथ्स वो नॉर्मल उसका प्रोसेसिंग टाइम है। सो द ब्रदर हु कॉल्ड इन वाज just asking about a visa application that had been submitted. Application had been submitted on the basis of British children or children who'd lived in the United Kingdom for 7 years. In my experience, as far as the Home Office is concerned, those are normally slightly more complex cases, and they do take a long time to be processed. You may find that most applications are processed within 3 to 4 months. That's the case with normal applications. Where applications are more complex, it could be because, like what our viewer was saying, that it's based on children and not based on just a partner in the United Kingdom. Nothing straightforward, slightly complex. They could take 6 months, 7 months to be decided. So it could take a slightly longer time for the case to be decided. So that's the position with that. Let's just go back to the other questions that we've had coming in. We've had numerous questions that have come in. Let's look at the next question. Next question is, again, relating to immigration law. Our viewer says, I am a teacher, a retired teacher leading a comfortable life. I would like to invite a 28-year-old bachelor, a distant cousin, to do a bachelor's in education in the United Kingdom. She already possesses a master's degree. Any advice? I understand that. So, a family member abroad who wishes to come to the United Kingdom in order to study at bachelor's level. Now, the way the system works at the moment is that there's 2 things that the student would need to do with your assistance, if necessary. First of all, they would need to obtain a place at a university to follow this course, and the university would confirm that they are willing to issue a CAS letter to them, confirming that they've been offered a place at the particular university. So the first thing is getting a place at a university in the United Kingdom. The second aspect is enough money to cover the cost of the fees for that particular course and to provide for living expenses as well. Typically, the course fees might be in the region of about £14,000. There's then a formula to work out living expenses in the United Kingdom. If you add both together, in my experience, what the student needs, it's approximately £25,000 in savings or thereabouts. That covers the course fee and it also covers the living expenses. They need that money in their bank account or their parents' bank account. You unfortunately can't say, look, they'll stay with me, so it's going to cost less, or I will assist as necessary. You can't sponsor the student, so you can't sponsor the student. this is the way it's done. They would have to get a place at a university. And in terms of expenses, the expenses for the course and living expenses, that's covered by showing savings in their bank account or their parents' bank account, and you hold that for a considerable period of time. We'll take a short break. We'll be back in the next couple of minutes. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to the Free Legal Advice Show on British Muslim TV. I'm your host, Ilyas Bulbulia. Just before the break, we were looking at the issue regarding somebody coming to the United Kingdom as a student. And as I was explaining, the way the system now works is you don't really look at whether there's a sponsor in the UK or not, a family member who's able to sponsor them to come to the UK. The savings that they need has to be in their account or in the bank account of their parents. That's what you have to show in terms of ability to fund the course and ability to pay for one's living expenses. And the money that you need is in the region of £25,000. There's a way of calculating that, but that gives you a rough idea about the kind of money we're talking about. Fantastic. We've had numerous questions coming in on WhatsApp, which is fantastic. Please do continue to send your questions in on that mobile number, which appears at the bottom of the screen. The question that you send in is fed through to me here live on air, and I'm able to look at those questions and to advise you as we go on. Okay. Now, the next question is again about citizenship. Seems to be a popular topic today. So let's look at that question. Does a woman who is 65 years old, who has lived in the UK for over 30 years, who applies for citizenship, will she need her husband's citizenship papers or passport as she's unable to provide them? And also, will she be exempt from the Life in the UK test? So two questions been put here in relation to a citizenship application. And what's been said here by our viewer is a lady who is 65 years old, lived in the UK for 30 years. The question that's been put is, the lady, when she applies for citizenship, does she need to give the papers for her husband, as in a copy of the husband's passport? And the second question that's been put is whether there is a requirement for her to pass the Life in the UK test. Now, first question. Lady applies for citizenship. Somebody who's lived in the UK for 30 years, probably held indefinite leave to remain for a long period of time, does not need to provide details or certainly documentary evidence relating to her sponsor. Yes, there is a question in the form that's filled in online about current partner or a previous partner. If you have divorced or separated, there are questions relating to that which you need to answer. But the application does not require documentary evidence in relation to the husband. The papers for the partner are only necessary where you've obtained indefinite leave to remain and you want to apply for British nationality without waiting 1 year. You want to apply straight away. If you're applying straight away after you get indefinite leave to remain, you can only do so if you have a partner that's British. But where you've got indefinite leave to remain a long time ago, more than a year ago, you don't need to show documentary evidence relating to your husband or your husband's status or partner status. You simply will provide information as to their name, date of birth, etc., whether you're together, whether you're divorced. So that's the kind of information that's provided. But there's no need to provide a copy of their passport, their wage slips, etc. So that's the answer to the first part of your question. You don't need documentary evidence relating to the husband. Second part of the question is much easier to answer. The second question that's been put is whether there is a requirement to pass the Life in the UK test. where somebody is 65 years of age or more, then they are completely exempt from the English language and knowledge requirement. So there's no need to pass the Life in the UK test, and neither is there a need to pass the English speaking and listening test. So you don't need to do the Life in the UK test, and you also don't need to do the English speaking and listening test. Why? Because you're at an age where these requirements don't apply to you. You're exempt from these requirements. So at the age of 65, once you hit that age, you're free from having to do the Life in the UK test or the B1 test. That's a bit of good news. So on both fronts, I can't see a problem with the application. You don't need to provide documentary evidence of your husband. So if you don't have it, don't worry about it. And you don't need to do the Life in the UK test or the other test in English. So hope that answers that question. Fantastic. As always, if you want to speak to me live on air, please continue to call on that landline number which appears at the bottom of the screen. Alternatively, as always, as you have been doing, please do continue to send your messages in on the WhatsApp number as well. Now, the next question that's come in, again, looks like a question on immigration. Let me read the question out. I've not seen the question as it's come in. Let's see what it entails. My sister was married to a British citizen, and 7 years ago he divorced her, but never called her over to the United Kingdom. She has a 7-year-old daughter who has a British passport but has never entered the United Kingdom. I just wanted to know if there is any chance that my sister can come to the UK on the basis of her daughter. So, sister was married to a British citizen. 7 years ago, they divorced. Never sponsored to come to the United Kingdom. The daughter is abroad. Daughter has a British passport. Is the way of coming to the United Kingdom? Well, there was a much easier way of coming to the United Kingdom on the basis of a European application known as a Zambrano application. The beauty of that application was that there was actually no need to pay a fee. You could come to the United Kingdom without making an immigration application which requires a significant fee to be paid. This would be a European application. And it was possible to do that without paying a fee. Now, because we've left the European Union, we're no longer part of the European laws relating to free movement, etc., that no longer applies. But it may still be possible to apply. The application would really be based on the fact that the child who's British wants to exercise his or her British citizenship, live in the United Kingdom. There will be a number of requirements which need to be fulfilled. One is the applicant, here the sister, would have to pass the English test. There is another requirement, which sometimes is a bit more difficult to fulfill, would need to show that they have enough income or savings in order to be able to accommodate and maintain themselves in the United Kingdom. And the way I've normally done these applications is to say that you pass the English test. In terms of income, you could potentially rely on a job offer, although that is a bit risky because sometimes the Home Office is not willing to accept that. An easier way is to have savings in your bank account in the region of approximately £15,000, and to show the savings and to say, look, I've got savings to look after myself. I've also got a family member who I can live with for free, and that meets the maintenance requirement. So I passed the English test, I've got enough money, and there's two bases then to make the application. One is that, I'm going to the United Kingdom with my daughter, or alternatively, it may be that the daughter who's 7 years old comes to the United Kingdom, and the application is made on the basis that, look, my daughter's in the United Kingdom, been looked after by my family, my sister, my brother, whoever it is. I now want to go to the United Kingdom to be with my daughter. Perfectly possible to do that. If the application is refused, a lot of these applications are refused. If it's refused, you will have a right of appeal. So you need to think about whether the application is based on going together, or the daughter comes to the United Kingdom first, starts school, etc. An application is made to join the daughter in the United Kingdom. Now, my view is, if the daughter's here and settled, going to school here, and immediately afterwards, you make an application to join the daughter in the United Kingdom, that may be a stronger application to make. That's one aspect of the application. You still need to show that you're able to pass the English test, same as what you would have to do if you were coming to the United Kingdom as a spouse, that very basic A1 test in English. And the other requirement, which does cause a problem, is to do with having enough money to be able to maintain and accommodate yourself in the United Kingdom. My personal view is they may not accept a job offer in the United Kingdom. If that's the case, you're better off showing that you have savings, or family members might give you a gift of money. The money's in your bank account for 6 months, and to show that, look, I've got money that I can rely on, plus I've got free accommodation in the United Kingdom. So it's quite a complicated application that you'd need to put together. But in my view, it is possible to make a successful application along the lines of what you've put to us. I have to say, it would have been much easier had this application been made approximately a year ago or so. There was a very easy European application that could be made, a Zambrano application, absolutely free of charge. You'd have saved yourself in the region of about £3,700. So significant savings in terms of money as well. So that would have been better. But look, all is not lost. I think it's one of those where you should try. There is a real possibility of being able to come to the United Kingdom on the basis of the British child. Nothing to do with the former partner, nothing to do with him at all. It's based on the child that's British, and it's also based on your ability to maintain and accommodate yourself, and you've passed the English test as well. That's how the application would be put together. So don't lose hope. There is a clear possibility of coming to the United Kingdom. I would advise you, but because this matter is quite complex, that you do take advice from an experienced immigration lawyer. Taking a short break. We'll be back in the next couple of minutes. See you then. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to the free legal advice show on British Muslim TV. To speak to me live on air, please call on the landline number which appears at the bottom of the screen. Alternatively, please send us or continue to send us your messages on the mobile number which also appears at the bottom of the screen. Now, I did say a while ago in response to one of the questions that came in relating to British citizenship as to the date by which if you applied for indefinite leave to remain, the date by which you've applied for indefinite leave to remain, you would have, if you apply at that particular date, if you applied before that date, you'd need to still do the Life in the UK test and the B1 test in English if you applied later on for citizenship. But those people who applied after this particular date would be exempt from the English language requirements. The position is this, that when you apply for British citizenship, and you actually obtained indefinite leave to remain a long time ago, you need to look at when you obtained indefinite leave to remain. If you obtained indefinite leave to remain prior to 28th of October 2013, so if you obtained indefinite leave prior to 28 October 2013, you would not have fulfilled the English knowledge and English language requirement, because that requirement only came into force on the 28th of October 2013. So you need to look at when you applied. If you apply for indefinite leave to remain before if you've applied before 28th of October 2013, you would not have met the English knowledge and language requirement because it didn't exist at that stage. Now, anybody who applied for indefinite leave to remain after 28th of October 2013 would have met the English knowledge and language requirement. There are some very, very limited exceptions to that, where the application is based on domestic violence, discretionary leave, etc. But generally speaking, anybody who applied for indefinite leave to remain after 28th of October 2013 would have met the knowledge and language requirement. So you would have done the Life in the UK test, you would have done the B1 test in English, whatever level or whatever type of qualification which was acceptable then. It may not have been called Trinity College B1 test. It might have been called something else. But anybody who's applied after the 28th of October 13 would have fulfilled that requirement. So that's the date. When did you apply for indefinite leave to remain? Was it before 28th of October 13 or was it after 28th of October 2013? That's what you need to look at. Anybody who's applied before still has to do not only the Life in the UK test, but that the B1 test. Now, if you've been asked to do the B1 test, you will need to do it. Best way to do it is to go onto the Trinity College website and book your test there. You'll be able to get a date very, very quickly, within a couple of days. And you'll get a result soon thereafter. And you just need to inform the Home Office of the test that you've done and the fact that you passed the test and what the reference number is. They will be able to check that you have passed the test and hopefully approve your citizenship application. Hope that answers your question and it clears up any confusion. The key date is 28th of October 2013. If you've applied before that for ILR, you're going to have to do the test again. If you applied after that date, you would have fulfilled the English language and knowledge requirement. Hope that answers the question. Right, we've had a number of other questions coming in on WhatsApp, which is fantastic. But if you do want to speak to us live on air, please do give me a ring on that landline number, which appears at the bottom of the screen. Now, okay, let's look at the next question that's coming in. We seem to be getting a lot of citizenship questions today. I came to the United Kingdom in 2002. I am now 31 years old. I went to school here. They gave me indefinite leave to remain straight away. I was young at the time. Now, didn't apply for a passport then. If I apply for citizenship now, do I need to take the Life in the UK test? I was 11 when I entered the UK. Don't have any passports. Now, the basic position is if you apply for citizenship now, I know you've been here for an extremely long time, been here since 2002, so coming up to 20 years in the United Kingdom, you would still need to do the citizenship. You would need to apply for citizenship and you would need to do the English tests as well. You know, when people come to the United Kingdom at quite a young age, if they apply for British citizenship before they turn 18, so they're still classed as a child, they're not an adult at that stage, so they apply and the application is processed before they turn 18, then they would be exempt from the English language and knowledge requirement. But once you're an adult, it doesn't then really matter when you came to the United Kingdom or how long you've lived in the United Kingdom. The fact that you are applying for British citizenship when you're an adult means that you would need to fulfill the English requirement, unless you're obviously exempt, because as we discussed before, because of your age, you're 65 or over, you might, if there's a mental illness which prevents you from passing the test, or if you have another nationality which exempts you from the English language requirements, such as Canadian nationality, New Zealand nationality, etc. But generally speaking, it doesn't really matter when you came to the UK, when you obtained indefinite leave to remain. You might have obtained indefinite leave to remain when you were just a child, but that's not relevant. It's how old are you at the time you make the citizenship application. If you're an adult, 18 or over, then the English language and knowledge requirement does need to be fulfilled. Hope that answers that question. Right, we've got numerous questions coming in. Let's look at the next question that's come in. I think this appears to be a question about parents who you want to apply to try and keep parents in the United Kingdom. Understandable. Even in practice, we get numerous questions on this. Our viewer says, "Hi, my father passed away last month, and we would like to bring our mother to the United Kingdom. Myself and my brother both live and work in the United Kingdom, and we are British citizens. My other brother lives in Canada with his family. How do we provide evidence that there isn't anyone in Bangladesh to look after my mum? We've got obviously family that lives here. Is there any way we can keep our mother with us in the United Kingdom?" Now, this is a question that we regularly receive here live on the show, and in practice you come across this regularly as well. Is there anything that can be done to sponsor parents to come to the United Kingdom to live here on a permanent basis? And unfortunately, it is extremely difficult, I would say near impossible, to sponsor parents to come to the United Kingdom to live here on a permanent basis based on the mother having a children in the United Kingdom. Based on that family relationship, it's virtually impossible. The problem is this, that there was a category whereby parents who are 65 or over and dependent on their children in the United Kingdom could come to the United Kingdom in order to settle with their children. That route was abolished in the summer of 2012. So since summer 2012, it's been extremely difficult to sponsor parents to come to the United Kingdom on a permanent basis. If you go on the internet, if you go on the government website, there is a category known as the adult dependent relative category. A lot of people look at that category and, are hopeful of applying under that category. I have to say, in my experience, it is very difficult indeed to come to the United Kingdom under the adult dependent relative category. The reason for that is that that category is for relatives, parents who are abroad, who have nobody in their home country to look after them. But in addition to that, there is no way of obtaining care in their home country, nursing care, or being cared for at home by carers, even if you are prepared to pay for that. Now, the reality is most countries, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Middle East, most countries now have a system whereby the elderly can be cared for. Fair enough. A lot of these countries will require you to pay. But the legal position is that if paid care can be accessed in your home country, then an application under the adult dependent relative category would be refused. So even if your parents or relatives are so old that they need personal care, they need help with putting clothes on, going to the shower, etc., and there's nobody within the family who was able to look after them, they're on their own. But even then, they will not grant you a visa under the adult dependent relative category if care is available, albeit it's care that you have to pay for. What I would suggest is that if you want your mum to come to the United Kingdom, completely understandable, dad's passed away. If you want your mum to come to the United Kingdom, make a normal visitor application. Now, what you have to bear in mind is with a visitor application, you have to demonstrate that mother who is applying has an intention to go back to her home country. So you have to show an intention to return to their home country, to Bangladesh. How do you demonstrate an intention to return? You demonstrate whether mum has income there, rental income, etc. You demonstrate what other family members are there. You demonstrate what assets she has. You demonstrate that she might have travelled to other countries and then returned back home. So at the visitor stage, you have to demonstrate an intention to return. If you make a visitor application and you say, look, there's nobody there, we want her to live here, the visitor application will be refused. So it's a very sad situation, very difficult to sponsor parents to come to the United Kingdom to live with their children here. Unfortunately, that brings us to the end of the show. Inshallah, we'll be back next week. Until then, Assalamu alaikum.